Welcome to the lecture, guys. In this lecture, we are going to cover the fundamental concept of the fluid mechanics. My name is Anmol Kumar. I am MTech in Aerospace Engineering from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and your instructor at iitpathshala.com at IIT Pathshala, Delhi. So you guys can contact me on the following number. Let us start with the lecture itself. Now let us discuss this particular assumption, which is called as the continuum. So according to this assumption, you are saying that your fluid properties are not varying discontinuously across time and space. Okay, so you are saying that if you are having a specific fluid property, then it is assumed to be having a definite value at every point in the space itself. And if you are having fluid properties, for example, density, temperature, velocity, and so on, then they are considered to be continuous function of position and time itself. Now, guys, this particular assumption falls whenever your flight vehicle is in the upper reaches of the atmosphere. Why? Because at that point, your mean free path is comparable to that of the characteristic length which you are taking for your problem itself. Now, with this particular information, let me give you a particular number over here, a dimensionless number over here, which is called as the Knudsen number. It is nothing but it is the ratio in between the mean free path upon the characteristic length. So if your Knudsen number is less than that of 0.01, then you can say that okay, my continuum assumption is valid in that case. But if it is greater than that of 0.01, slightly greater than that of 0.01, then you cannot apply this continuum. Okay, then we are having three specific flow for that, which are not in the scope of our subject over here, which are as follow. First one is the slip flow. In your Knudsen number is in between 0.01 to 0.1. Then there is your transition flow itself, in which your Knudsen number is in between 0.1 to 10 itself, and then there is free molecular flow, in which your Knudsen number is greater than that of 10 itself. Now let us discuss about the continuum limit itself. So it's a very important topic. So for example, as we have shown you that your fluid properties such as your density, temperature, velocity, etc., should be a continuous function of position and time itself. So whenever you are discussing about, let us say, density, you are saying that it is nothing but mass per unit volume itself. So how much bigger your volume should be, how much bigger your chunk should be, which you are considering into your problem itself. Okay, is it approaching towards zero? Is it big enough to seen by the naked eye itself? What should be the size of the chunk which you are taking? Okay, so that's the particular question. Now I should tell you that your chunk should be only that big before which the statistical fluctuation become significant. Okay, so here I'm having three kind of chunks over here. This is the bigger chunk, okay, as that of your size of your bottle itself. This is the smallest chunk as size of your molecular level itself, and this is the chunk in between both of them. So here you should not be taking a chunk big enough in which you are encountering inhomogeneity problems, and you should not be taking the smaller chunk in which you are having effect of random movement of your atoms itself. So you should be having a chunk in between both of them. The assumption should be in between both of them in order to remove any kind of problems. Now let us define some fields over here. So first we are taking a scalar field. So as you know that a scalar is a quantity which is having only the magnitude but not the direction itself. Okay, so you know that field is a particular region in which you are having a parameter defined p, and it is defined across that particular region itself. Okay, so for example, if you are having this as your region and you are having a parameter p, then this particular parameter is defined across this region. Outside this region it is not defined. So in the scalar field, if you are saying that at every point of the region which I have defined over here, I am getting a certain value of that particular scalar parameter, then this field can be defined as my scalar field itself. So for example, as you can see, this is a room over here and I have put a heater at the particular point of the room. So I can measure the temperature at various distance from this particular point as follow. Let us measure the particular temperature at this point, and let us measure the temperature at this point. So I am having a color coded graph over here. So I can put the value of the temperature, I can measure the value of temperature at this particular position A. From this particular graph I can give you the number of temperature at this particular point B from this particular graph, just from seeing this particular graph itself. Okay, so I can say that in this region can be called as the temperature field of my room itself. Okay, now another example is, for example, if you are having your rod itself and you are heating your rod at the end A. Okay, so you will be experiencing a lesser temperature at this particular point B, and you will be experiencing a higher temperature at this particular point, namely A dash. So you are having a temperature gradient across this particular rod itself. So your temperature is distributed across the rod itself. You can say that this is also my scalar field, knowing the fact that temperature is a scalar quantity because it is only having the magnitude but not the direction associated with it. Now let us talk about the vector field over here. So in a vector field, we are having a definite vector which is defined at every position in a particular area itself. For example, here I have taken a vector, namely velocity vector over here. Okay, so if I'm having a point P over here, I can just define that at this particular point P, I'm having the falling magnitude of the velocity and the falling direction of the velocity. So this field is called as the vector field. Now let us describe you the basic thing about a flow field. So the region in which the flow parameter, for example, your velocity, pressure, etc., are defined at each and every point and at each and every instant of the time, then I call it as flow field. So here I have mapped the graph over here. As you can see, color coded maps are there. So my pressure is varying across the whole length of the pipe as follow at this particular time step, and at this particular time step it is defined as follow. So the color map is as follow. Okay, similarly I'm having the velocity also, and I'm having the vorticity also defined across my pipe across various of the timestamps itself. So this is nothing but my flow field itself. Let us define 1D, 2D and 3D flow over here. So you know that this is your particular Cartesian coordinate system, x, y, z, orthogonal to each other. Now when you are saying that my flow is 1D flow, then you say that my velocity is varying according to x only, or it is varying according to y only, or it is varying according to z only. So this is your 1D flow. For 2D flow, you say that your velocity is varying according to either two of them, either xy or yz or zx itself. So according to 3D flow, your velocity should be varying according to all of them. Okay, so your velocity should be a function of all of them, x, y and z itself. Now here I have taken certain examples. So first example is saying that my velocity vector is varying according to velocity vector x, y, z. So it is a 3D flow because my velocity is varying according to all of them, x, y and z. It is a function of all of them. Now in these kind of cases, people make mistake that they see the vector and get confused. Okay, you are not going to see the vector in these kind of problem. You are going to see the parameters given in the problem itself. Either it is x or y or z itself. They are the defining values over here. They are going to define whether your flow is 1D, 2D or 3D, not the vectors itself. For example, here as you can see in this particular problem, I'm having v equal to 2x, y, z, I cap. So my flow is flowing in positive x direction. My vector is saying that my flow is having a definite direction itself. Here as you can see, x, y and z is given. So my velocity is varying according to x, y and z. I is only showing the direction of my velocity itself. So I can say that this is a 3D flow. Here in this particular problem, as you can see, my velocity is equal to I cap, j cap, k cap. So he is saying that I am having this particular direction of the velocity. But my velocity is solely the function of x over here itself. So I can say that this is 1D flow. Here as you can see that my velocity is in the positive x direction again, but the velocity is varying according to the function of x and y. So I can say that this is nothing but a 2D flow. Now guys, here as you can see in this particular problem, in this particular diagram over here, my velocity is varying according to the radius itself. So this is a 1D flow. Here as you can see that my velocity is varying according to the radius itself and also with x-axis over here. So there are two dimensions associated. So I can say that this is a two-dimensional flow.